Imagine you're in Kerala, India. Beautiful, vibrant place. The air is thick with spices and the landscape is just lush. But in this paradise, a chilling story unfolds. It's a story about a young couple, Arjun and Neha. They were deeply in love and recently married, but just 2 weeks after their wedding, they vanish, without a trace. What seemed like a simple missing persons case quickly became a complex investigation. It revealed an undercurrent of jealousy and possessiveness, and a brutal crime that shook this community to its core.
Welcome to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Love series. Today we're diving into the Kerala Missing Newlyweds Case. It's a story that reminds us that love in its most twisted forms can have terrible consequences. To help us unravel this case, I'm joined by an expert in criminal psychology. They've been following this case and have a lot of insight into the minds of the people involved. So let's start with the couple at the heart of this tragedy, Arjun and Neha. What can you tell us about them?
Well, Arjun and Neha's story is a reminder that love often defies societal norms. Arjun was a 28-year-old teacher, and Neha was a 25-year-old nurse. They were very much in love. But their families, who were bound by tradition and social hierarchy, initially opposed the union. You see, their differing backgrounds created a rift. Their path to marriage wasn't easy.
It sounds like their love story was a testament to their determination. But then, just 2 weeks after their wedding, they disappeared. Take us back to that day. What do we know about their last known movements?
On September 28, 2017, Arjun and Neha told their families that they were going to a nearby town. They set off on Arjun's scooter and they promised to return by evening. It was a normal day for them, full of newlywed excitement. But as hours passed and night fell, their families started to worry. Their calls went unanswered, and that feeling of dread crept in.
I can only imagine what their families were going through. Did the police consider that maybe they had eloped, given that their families didn't approve of the marriage?
Of course, that was one of the first theories they considered. Elopement? Well, it seemed possible, especially with all that societal pressure they were under. However, as days turned into weeks and there was no contact from the couple, the thought of a simple elopement seemed less and less likely. With no communication and the circumstances surrounding their disappearance, a much grimmer picture started to emerge.
And then the abandoned scooter was found. What was it about this detail that shifted the focus of the investigation?
The scooter, it was discovered on a secluded roadside. It became a really important clue. The location itself was strange. Why would a newlywed couple going to a nearby town choose to go on such an isolated road? The isolation, along with their sudden disappearance, raised a lot of concerns. That's when investigators began to suspect foul play.
So the abandoned scooter was a huge clue. Did the police find any other evidence at the scene that pointed towards something more sinister?
As the investigation deepened, forensic experts examined the scooter. They were hoping for anything that could lead them to Arjun and Neha. But what they found was chilling. Blood on the handlebar.
That's a chilling discovery. Was the blood confirmed to be Arjun's?
Yes, through forensic analysis, it was confirmed to be Arjun's blood. This eliminated any remaining hope of an elopement or an accident. It became very clear that a violent crime had taken place. The investigation took a grim turn. The focus shifted to finding the people responsible for Arjun's disappearance, and likely Neha's as well. The discovery of Arjun's blood, it really sent shockwaves through the community. This peaceful village, that image was shattered. It was replaced by fear and uncertainty. The police knew this was a potential homicide now. They had to act fast.
So what did they do to uncover the truth behind Arjun and Neha's disappearance? Did they have any leads at this point?
The Kerala police, they launched a full investigation. They used all sorts of techniques to piece together what happened leading up to the couple's disappearance. They started by retracing Arjun and Neha's steps, interviewing family, friends, anyone who might have seen them that day.
Did they find out anything useful? Any potential suspects come up?
Well, as they interviewed people in the village, a pattern started emerging. Several witnesses mentioned seeing Arjun and Neha arguing with a group of men near the spot where their scooter was found. This gave the investigators a solid lead.
An argument with a group of men. That's disturbing. Did the witnesses give any descriptions of these men? Could they identify them?
They couldn't give any names, but they did give descriptions. They said they were relatively young and kind of rough-looking. One witness even said one of them seemed wealthy, influential. This really stood out to the investigator.
A wealthy and influential figure. That definitely complicates things.
Yeah.
Did this lead the police to any suspects?
The police looked at all the witness accounts, checked them against people in the area, especially those who matched the descriptions and who might have a reason to do this. That's when Vijay Kumar's name came up.
Vijay Kumar. Tell us about him. Who was he, and how was he connected to Arjun and Neha?
Vijay Kumar was a distant relative of Neha's. He was a businessman, quite wealthy, well known in the community. But he had a secret. He had feelings for Neha for years, and he really didn't like her marriage to Arjun.
So we have a suspect with a possible motive. Jealousy. Did they have any real proof linking him to Arjun and Neha's disappearance?
They had the witness accounts, and they knew Vijay resented the couple, so they brought him in for questioning. He denied everything at first, said he was out of town that day, but his alibi fell apart quickly. The police had evidence, cell phone records putting him near the scooter around the time of the argument.
So he was cornered. Did Vijay confess?
Well, with the evidence piling up and the questioning, Vijay cracked. He confessed to planning the abduction and murder of Arjun and Neha. It was a shock to the community. It was a story of jealousy, rage, and a carefully planned crime.
A carefully planned crime. Tell me more about his confession. What exactly happened? How did he pull this off?
His confession, it showed he was cold and calculating. He had been planning this for weeks. He was obsessed with Neha and wanted Arjun out of the picture. He got 2 accomplices to help him. Ruthless guys. He promised them a lot of money to do his dirty work.
It's hard to believe someone could be so consumed by jealousy, to go to such extremes. Did his accomplices confess too?
Oh, yes. After Vijay confessed, the police found his accomplices. And with all the evidence in Vijay's confession, they confessed too. Their confessions, well, they showed just how brutal this crime was.
I know this is difficult to talk about, but I think our listeners need to understand the extent of this tragedy. Can you tell us what happened to Arjun and Neha, based on the confessions?
All right. So according to the confessions, Vijay and the accomplices, they intercepted Arjun and Neha. They were on their way to the town. Vijay lured them to that secluded spot, pretended he wanted to talk. It was a trap to get them alone.
So that argument that the witnesses saw, that was part of the plan, to separate them and abduct them.
Exactly. They wanted to make it look like a normal argument, like the couple just drove off angry. Once they were alone, Vijay's accomplices, they attacked Arjun. They had weapons. They killed him. Neha saw the whole thing. Then they took her away.
Oh my God. It's horrifying to think what they went through. Did they say what happened to Neha?
Vijay, he was so filled with rage and this twisted sense of possession. He couldn't stand the thought of Neha living without him. So he told them to kill her too. They took her to a forest and murdered her. It was a senseless act of violence.
This is a truly heartbreaking story. It's a reminder of how dark humans can be and the terrible consequences of jealousy and possessiveness. But what happened after that? Did they find the bodies?
After they got the confessions, they immediately started looking for the bodies. They used the information Vijay and his accomplices gave them. The search led them to that forest. It was a tough search, emotionally draining. But they did find Arjun and Neha's remains. It brought some closure to the missing persons part of the case.
It must have been devastating for their families. They had hoped they were still alive. What about Vijay and his accomplices? Did they face justice?
Yes, they did. The case went to trial in 2018. The prosecution built a strong case. They used the forensic evidence, the witness statements, and the confessions. They argued that Vijay planned these murders, that it was revenge, driven by jealousy and possessiveness.
What about the defense? Did they try to fight the charges?
The defense, well, they tried to downplay Vijay's role, said it was a crime of passion, that things just got out of hand. They said it wasn't planned, just a tragic outcome of a heated argument. But the evidence was too strong.
That doesn't sound like a very good defense. Not with all that planning and the brutality of the crime. What was the verdict?
The jury, they considered everything. All the evidence, the details, they deliberated for days and then found them guilty. Vijay Kumar and his accomplices, guilty of murder.
It sounds like justice was served. What were their sentences?
In late 2018, they got their sentences. Life in prison. For those horrific acts. The judge, he said they were cold-blooded, driven by a toxic sense of possession, and no regard for human life.
Life in prison. It seems like the right punishment for such an awful crime. But even though justice was served, it doesn't take away the pain for Arjun and Neha's families. Their lives were cut short, their dreams destroyed by a senseless act.
In this case, it didn't just affect their families, it shook the whole community. People were left with fear, anger, and a sense of loss. This peaceful village, well, that image was changed forever.
It's a disturbing case, but it makes us think about bigger issues. Where does this kind of violence come from? How dangerous are jealousy and possessiveness? And do cultural norms play a role in these tragedies?
Absolutely. This case shows us the dark side of humanity, how even ordinary people are capable of violence. We have to face some uncomfortable truths about jealousy and how destructive it can be.
And the fact that this happened in a love triangle, well, that's a classic story. But it makes it even more chilling. What can we learn from this about love and how it could be twisted into something dangerous?
It shows us that love can be a good thing, but it can also be turned into something dark. Jealousy, possessiveness, not being able to accept rejection, these things can turn love into a weapon, and the consequences can be devastating.
We hear phrases like blinded by love or crazy in love. But this case shows us how those phrases can hide dangerous tendencies. How can we tell the difference between healthy love and toxic love?
That's an important question. It's all about recognizing the warning signs. Healthy love is about respect, trust, and supporting each other. It's about letting each other grow and be individuals. But toxic love, that's about control, manipulation, and wanting to possess the other person. It often involves emotional abuse, isolating someone from their friends and family, and making them afraid of losing you.
So seeing those warning signs early on is really important. What advice would you give to someone who might be in a toxic relationship? Or someone who sees these signs in someone they care about?
Well, the first thing is to remember you're not alone. If you're in a relationship where you're being abused or controlled, get help. Talk to someone you trust. A friend, a family member, or a therapist. There are people who can support you and help you get out safely. And if you see these signs in someone you care about, be there for them. Offer your support without judgment. Encourage them to get help and let them know you're there for them.
That's great advice. This case really shows us that we need to be aware for ourselves and for the people we care about. We need to create a culture where healthy relationships are what we strive for and where we recognize and address toxic behavior.
Exactly. We need to learn about healthy relationships, about communication, respect, and boundaries. And we need to challenge those ideas that lead to toxic masculinity and this sense of ownership in relationships.
Arjun and Neha's story is a tragedy, but it's a wake-up call. Their loss can inspire us to build a world where love is a positive force, where relationships are based on respect and understanding, and where violence is never the answer. So as we finish our deep dive into this heartbreaking case, I'll leave you with this thought. Love should never be about fear or control. It should be about joy, support, and growing together. Let's honor Arjun and Neha by fighting for healthy relationships, by challenging toxic behavior, and by creating a world where love can truly thrive. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you found this deep dive insightful, please follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle. We have new episodes every week. We explore human behavior, criminal investigations, and the search for justice. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel too. We have interviews with experts and behind-the-scenes looks at the cases we cover. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.